By now, it's no longer a revival of thrash. By now, it's been about close to a decade ever since we got the first inkling that thrash metal was going to be coming back with a vengeance after lying dormant for a time in the 1990s. And this was really something that did take a lot of people by surprise at first, but as it kind of started to linger on, it no longer became a revival. It basically just became the same fixture of heavy metal music that it used to be. We got a lot of great albums from a ton of different bands, and one band that has certainly really excelled during the fruits of the thrash revival over the past near decade has been Death Angel. I consider their last affair, considering everything that they have really been able to accomplish ever since they've come back. Death Angel was a band that was definitely kind of praised during the second wave of thrash metal came in the latter part of the 1980s, and certainly one that seeing them once again was definitely a bright spot on a lot of different people's metal radars. Here in 2013 is no different. In fact, here in 2013 we have another Death Angel album, and one that definitely promises to deliver, entitled The Dream Calls for Blood. Now, The Dream Calls for Blood, whenever you consider it just by the base terminology of the name itself, definitely has a real morbid undertone to it. It's one that definitely seems as though it is promoting a lot of homicidal thoughts, a lot of homicidal dreams, either that or something that just really delivers a real message of turmoil, which is kind of a great metaphor for what's been going on with me lately. So this is definitely an album that seems apt, almost as though it really was needed to happen right around this time frame, much like this review was meant to happen right around this time frame. But it's time to push all of those elements aside and just get to the music. Now, as I've been able to mention, hopefully, throughout this introduction, we all know what style of music that this is going to be. We know that this is good old-fashioned, bona fide thrash metal. Now, thrash metal itself has definitely gotten a lot of polish to it over the course of this thrash metal revival, and Death Angel is certainly a band that has been able to take advantage of that and definitely increase their abilities, whether it be instrumentally, either that or with their delivery. Their vocal delivery is definitely one that encounters just absolute brutality. It's one that definitely has a lot going for it. It's one that is not necessarily all of that new. However, it's still a take that for thrash fans will be kind of universally loved probably until, the day that it dies, if it ever does. Especially old school fans. Old school fans are going to find a lot of favor in this updated Death Angel. Now, while it might not be kind of as reserved as some of their older previous work has kind of had at times, I look at Act 3 for a little bit of a judgment there. This is definitely one that shows them kicking at all cylinders and definitely sounding ageless in the matter. The Dream Calls for Blood is definitely an album that has just great riffing, but they're definitely not willing to shy away from those softer, more melodic moments that kind of haunt through. Something that definitely made some of their earlier releases very memorable. And I definitely feel that the first part of the last track, the 6-minute and 37-second long finale to Territorial Instinct / Bloodlust, certainly shows this fact and showcases it rather nicely. We also see a similar idea with Execution / Don't Save Me, so they kind of went the overkill route of having multiple songs on the same album that have multiple parts. Now, this isn't the same as, say, a progressive metal band that easily can construct suites out of, 4 or 5 different tracks. This is instead something where you have a bit of an introduction, an introductory idea that then goes into the overall concept, the overall idea, and the body and soul of the song. I really have to give and deliver high praise for the song Succubus. This is definitely the one where I feel the bulk of the rage, the bulk of just the energy really is kind of delivered. This is probably one of the most high-tempered, high-emotion, just absolute, angry performances I've probably heard out of Death Angel in quite some time. And that's including their stuff from the revival period. This is a song that just really, whenever you consider the topic alone, it's one that certainly has the ability and should have the impact of something that has huge angry ties to it, unless you're speaking about this just from a general legendary perspective. This instead seems as though it takes the more traditional route of somebody who is kind of comparing somebody that they know in their life to the succubus, and really just noticing how it has affected their lives, and how their web of lies, deceit, destruction, and their own internal combustion has really led to negative times for somebody who doesn't deserve it. Whenever you listen onto this album, whenever you listen from Left 4 Dead all the way down to songs such as Detonate Empty and the last track, Territorial Instinct and Bloodlust, you're going to notice the consistency right away. You're going to notice that this is definitely an album that doesn't take its foot off of the accelerator throughout the entirety of its 10 tracks, throughout the entirety of its close to 50 minutes. This is certainly an album that has a lot going for it as far as the musical construction is concerned. Thrash metal is not something where you're going to necessarily get a wealth of new ideas, and it's definitely not something where you're going to see a wealth of evolution. But that's just because thrash metal in general is a style of music that is individualized all its own. It's one that its organic growth is more so in the minor little ideas that they're able to infuse upon their the already pre-established norm. Not to mention production perks, and not to mention also just perks in performance. If you're able to really deliver the sinister snarl, if you're really able to deliver soaring solos, if you're really able to deliver just really good music, and not really become overindulgent, there's a great chance that a thrash metal album is going to be right at home for a thrash metal fan, and for a lot of heavy metal fans. Thrash just kind of has that idea, and I think it's the reason why it became such a huge commodity in the 1980s whenever it first hit the scene. It has that perfect blend of heavy metal with that same anger and that frustration and just the generalized quickness and pace that punk music was able to deliver in the latter part of the 1970s. Overall, The Dream Calls for Blood really delivers very nicely. I really like the fact that this album just seems to flow right one track into one another. I really like the pacing, and the overall body of work just sounds very solid. I actually prefer this a little bit more than their previous album, and I really feel that this kind of gives a lot of thrash metal fans and Death Angel fans something to not only be really stoked for here in 2013, but something that's going to cause them to really jump for joy and thrash around like a fucking maniac like they did whenever they were maybe 16 or 17 once they get the opportunity to hear it. This is definitely one that proves why these bands seem to somehow maintain the energy and maintain ageless, even though the number that is in the age box of their driver's license or any other public, form definitely seems to speak to the contrary. Really like this album. I'm going to give it an 8.2 out of 10, 8.25 rather, and I'm going to highly recommend this to each and every one of you. This is one that I know that at least in my store there's a couple of copies coming in. There is definitely going to be a demand. I certainly would hope so. So this should be one that should be pretty readily available as long as you have a store that isn't, a major chain and that's it. So definitely check this one out and keep fucking headbanging. God damn it.